Next up, we are going to talk about controversial content creator Andrew Tate and our good friend Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner is a friend of the channel. Brittany Renner, Diamond the Body, Lori Harvey, Kanye West. We have a few people who are friends of the channel. We call them friends of the channel because they just keep producing. They are the gift that keeps on giving. They just give us stuff that fits in with the identity of this channel and the type of stuff that we like to talk about. But Andrew Tate and Brittany Renner were on the ESC podcast, and Brittany Renner asked Andrew Tate specifically, why is it that men have such a difficult time getting with women who have history? And Andrew Tate gave an Andrew Tate reason as to why men have an issue getting with women who have a history. Now, of course, this comes as no shock to anybody who even vaguely follows Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner is one of these. I don't know. I'll put it mildly. She's one of these social media socialite industry women who famous. She and you know, to her credit, she is accountable for this. So she talks about her baggage, but nevertheless, she is an industry chick with baggage who is in the midst of trying to reform her public image in such a way that she can come off as a woman who is worthy of being the wife or girlfriend to a dutiful man within the confines of a dutiful relationship. How, despite the fact that she wrote a book about all the rappers and athletes that she had sex with, and how she is the single mother to an NBA player, how, despite all of that, should still be looked upon as a dutiful wife and mother. That's what she's in the process of trying to do now. I don't think I'm out of bounds by saying that. And so she was on the ESC podcast. Andrew Tate, who is someone who makes videos about modern women and modern relationships, and he tends to get the adulation of the manosphere, which I have mixed feelings about because there are certain segments of the manosphere that, in my opinion, are toxic. But nevertheless, he's somebody who propagates this kind of stuff. He's become, he's become quite known as a result, and he makes a lot of money doing it. So there are a lot of these people out here, in particular men. I'm willing to bet that there are a lot of the men who are his fans are the same men that we described in our previous topic. But he has a pretty big following. He has a big fan base, and they were on the ESC podcast. And Brittany Renner asked Andrew Tate, "Why is it that men have such a difficult time getting with women who have baggage?" The word that she used was "used." So she was like, "Well, why do men have such an issue getting with used women when women can get with used men, and men are celebrated for being used, whereas women are vilified for being used?" So this was an interesting topic. It fits in with the profile of our channel. So we'll go ahead and listen to Andrew Tate's response to Brittany Renner's question, and then we'll talk about it.
As for, I don't know your history. I don't know the past, but we can just talk in generalizations in regards
people
to
like me, I guess, under the same umbrella. It doesn't have to be personal.
I don't know any of it, but we'll give generalizations. One of the main reasons that men are scared of a female with history is because it makes the man insecure. And scared dogs bite. So this is why men will snap or get angry quick, or they'll bring up if you get an argument with him, he'll bring up your history, whatever. But a lot of it is insecurity, and it's not insecurity because the man is insecure. The female paradigm in society convinces men, any man who says anything, you're insecure. It's not insecure in that way. It's insecure in a very realistic, logical way. Like I was saying earlier, she's had a lot of life experience. Let's be honest. Am I the richest guy she's ever had? No. Am I the most famous guy she's ever had? No. Am I the best looking guy she's ever had? No. Like, what's keeping her here? And then part of it comes down to, well, am I second place? If she could do better, would she do better? Like, there's a whole bunch of insecurity involved. And that's where tiny things, like I know it sounds like dumb shit, tiny things about the favorite car brand become more important than ever, right? It's your job as a woman, regardless of how much sexual history you've had or what guy you're with, etc. It's your job as a woman to make your man feel secure in the fact and make him feel like a man. like Auntie was saying, make him feel like the man no matter what he does, so that he feels like you really truly believe he's the best choice for you on the planet. That's your job to do. Now, if you've got a checkered past, that's perhaps more difficult. You need to be more tactful with it, more tactical about it. But you have to achieve the same result. You have to do the exact same thing, right? So, yeah, it's easy for me if I get a 21-year-old virgin from some village in Slovakia and I'm multimillionaire Andrew Tate. Of course, it's a very easy. She's never had better. She'll never get better. She's never been anywhere. Boom, boom, easy one, right? But like you said, the world's not so idealistic. The reality is that people have had relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But a man is happiest in the relationship when he feels like man of the house and when he truly feels like you believe he's the best man that you could possibly ever get and have ever gotten. Because a man is jealous. I'll tell you something.
All right. So that's pretty much the gist of it, in his explanation for that. So sounded measured and reasonable to me, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who don't agree with that. Do you think that what he said was reasonable and measured?
Oh, absolutely. So, the buzzwords that used to get to me, such as insecure. I mean, it didn't get to me, but it got some part of me. The insecure, you're being sensitive, and all these other things that
controlling,
these 4-letter words that used to get thrown at me, and I used to internalize them. I ain't gonna lie. He's like, hey man, I'm not being insecure. Are you kidding me? But whenever those words are thrown at men, they're thrown at them in the context of, for sure, shaming, but also so they could, it's like greasing you up to get away with something later. And the sense of which Andrew Tate is talking about insecurities, I would say this is a more healthy form and more realistic form, in the sense of, like how he said, why wouldn't you do better if you know that there is better out there? What's stopping you? Nothing stopped you before. You kept hopping and jumping to the next best thing every time. That's how you got me. So why wouldn't you just hop and leave me now? If you're addicted to the rush of elevating lifestyles. So I agree with his stance in that department, because with women that are modern, right? The one that are out here, living loosey-goosey, giving it off out of both draw legs, all right? Just letting the world have it. When they're living like that, they're taking each aspect from a guy that they liked, and they say, okay, this guy had, this much money. I want a guy with this much money. This guy was this good in bed. I want a guy with that much money and this good in bed. I had a guy who dressed this nice. I had a guy that wore this kind of cologne. I want a guy that makes this kind of money, this good in bed, this, and they create this Frankenstein man. Now there's this Frankenstein man in their head because they've had access to too many dudes. Guys compartmentalize their thoughts. So I can have a woman who was good at cooking, good in the bedroom, but bad emotionally. So when I deal with the next girl, the last girl was good at those things, but there is going to be a level of comparison, but not to the point of, I'm just drop this. If the girl is good enough cooking, if she's good enough in bed, and she's better emotions, because I want better emotions, then it's just like, all right, well, cool. So there's a thing where I can go from and I can be what we call content. Men can be content with what they have. It's just a difference in brain function. But what I'm witnessing, especially from modern woman syndrome, is they don't get content because they have this 4-letter word of settling, and they don't want to settle. So if they feel as though there's something out there better, then they're going to go hop and try to find something better. They'll sabotage whatever situation that they have so they can get free, or they'll call it off themselves, either or. And so what Tate is saying is that the more access to lifestyles, the more access to sexual prowess, the more access to whatever, then they're going to amalgamate some type of fictitious fantasy Frankenstein man that no man can live up to. So eventually those women end up being alone and unmarried at the end of the road because they tried to find Frankenstein. So I have more on this one, but how about you, sir? Do you agree with Mr. Tate on this one here?
Frankenstein, that's hilarious. I think a few videos ago, that same description, you called it the mystery man.
Yes,
But I think I like Frankenstein better because you're literally building a machine of a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of women do that. They do. Yeah, I agree with him. When I was in high school and I started trying to, play sports, when I was a freshman, I tried out for the basketball team JV, and I tried. You remember how the tryouts went? It was like it was like open gym. That's what they called it. So everybody goes in there and everybody's just playing pickup. They pick 5 guys on one team, another 5 guys. You do like a 5-10 minute run, game over, next game in. From there, the coaches make their observations and they make their selections. So I was in the open gym and I, was trying, and I'm in there and I'm trying out. And guys are getting cut left and right. There's one cut here, cut, right, cut. Guys everywhere are getting cut. No one in the open gym is making it to the actual team. Everybody's getting cut. So I eventually got cut. Now, a couple weeks later, because more guys got cut, they asked me to come back and run open gym again. True story. True story, yeah. So, now it's been like 4 or 5 weeks. Guys been getting cut all over the place. So now I'm in this second open gym and I'm freaking out because I don't want to get cut. I don't want to get cut. So it affected my play. It affected my play because I was not wanting to get cut. Now, it had no bearing on whether I was a good player or not. It was a measured physical response to anxiety that I was experiencing because I kept looking at everybody around me getting cut. It's not like it was a few cuts here, but guys were advancing to the next phase of the tryout process. Guys were just getting cut in open gym, like boom, right there on the spot. No, you're not good. You're not good enough. You're not good. Well, what are you looking for, coach? Like, what do you want? Like, guys can't even make it to second tryout, this first tryout, and y'all cutting everybody in open gym. And then I got cut already, and now you're bringing me back for the second round of first open gym to not even get to the next phase. So it affected my play. And eventually, because it affected my play so much, I was cut again. Now, this is an analogy because I'm trying to bring a point home. Now, I could have gone to these coaches and been like, yo, coach, is there anything that I could have done so that you didn't cut me despite everything that was going on? Like, I didn't I was playing scared because I didn't want to get cut. And, it would have scarred me for life if those coaches would have responded to me saying, you shouldn't worry about getting cut. Stop being insecure. Like, that's a measured, reasonable response to this, to things that are happening around me. Like, I'm getting cut all over the place. Now, you can say that I should be mentally tough enough to ward off all of that, but I think most human beings are going to be conscientious of their surroundings. I'm a 15-year-old kid, and I'm seeing everybody getting cut around me, and I got cut already, and then you brought me back again for a first-round cut situation in an open gym. So it's not even like I got a leg up because I was in the open gym before. You're bringing me back to start from scratch. And I think what Brittany Renner and people and women like her are trying to understand is, why can't I hold your feet to the fire for being insecure, but you still want to take me on? So in Brittany Renner's mind, I should be mentally strong enough to ward off all of that stuff that's going on in my immediate environment and still be strong-willed enough to play for your team, despite the fact that you've been cutting me since day one. So you can't have all of the leverage but not accept any responsibility for how some of this stuff plays out. So I think Andrew Tate is 100% right in his particular response in this regard. Because the thing about it is, just like it's a reasonable and measured response to for me to wonder whether I'm going to be cut or not because everybody around me is being cut, I think for any man, it's a reasonable and measured response to wonder whether, because he's dealing with a woman who's been with rappers, athletes, entertainers, guys who fly on private jets, millionaires, whatever the case may be, a guy who is now going to step into your cipher after you've had those various experiences, you can't turn around and say that he's being insecure because he's wondering whether you'll dunk on him for the next guy who might show you interest, who's a millionaire. That's a reasonable and measured response. But in Brittany Renner world, that man's being insecure. Now, to be reasonable, Brittany Renner wasn't calling men insecure during that podcast. But what Andrew Tate was addressing was the issue that men experience when dealing with women who have histories like the history of that of Brittany Renner. And I think that it's a completely measured response. No guy wants to deal with that kind of onslaught of an overload of information and history on the part of the women that he's dealing with. And much like we talked about before when we discussed Brittany Renner and women in Brittany Renner's position want to rewrite history and try to make it seem as though none of that stuff happened so that you can look upon me as dutiful, even though I've never, up until this point, conducted myself in a dutiful way. Most men are going to wonder whether you're going to dunk on me for the next situation if you perceive yourself to have the opportunity to upgrade. That doesn't make that guy insecure. It makes him a measured and reasonable person who's going to evaluate the information that's being presented to him. And that fits into the package of what makes it difficult for a man to seriously consider a quote used woman, to use the word that she used. She said used. You have to understand that. This is a bet. Once again, this is a bet that you made, and she accepts accountability for where she is, but she's still trying to reinvent the wheel and make it seem as though none of these things should be at play and that guys shouldn't consider any of this stuff. And I don't know how realistic it is to expect that. It isn't realistic at all. Most guys are going to do that. It is what it is. And it's no different, in all honesty, than a woman who is getting approached by a guy who she knows has a body count in the hundreds or thousands, right? So, let's say a guy who has been with your friend, been with your maybe you got a sister and you got a guy and this guy's coming at you, but this guy's been with your sister. This guy smashed a couple of your friends. He has sex with one or two chicks who you work with, or maybe there's a bar or a place that you like to go to socially, and that this guy also goes to that place, and he slept with 4 or 5 other women who you know of who also go to that place, and now he's coming at you. It would be reasonable for you to wonder whether he's going to get with you and then, sleep with the next chick because that's his history. Now, it would be completely unreasonable for that guy to call that woman out for being insecure or paranoid. Not that women ever get accused for being insecure, because that's something that pretty much exclusively gets levied at the feet of men only, which is another problem. But it would be unreasonable for that woman, it would be unreasonable for that guy to say, stop worrying about that. So what? I smashed 5 other chicks in this bar. I'm talking to you now. What's up? If you're going to be suspicious about that, I'm going to say that's a reasonable suspicion to have. So a lot of these buzzwords that get thrown around that are meant to make men feel guilty for standing on their own 2 feet and sticking to their morals and principles, like insecure and don't be controlling and all of these other words that they like to throw out there. I think that's what Tate is addressing, and I don't disagree. I think it's a measured, reasonable response. No guy wants to deal with that. Men want peace. They don't want to deal with constantly second guessing every decision that they make. And when you're dealing with a woman who's quote unquote used, men oftentimes don't feel at peace. So I have a lot more to say on this, obviously, or maybe not a lot, but maybe one or two other comments. But suffice to say, I don't have an issue necessarily with what Tate said. I more so have an issue with why women such as Brittany Renner can't seem to understand that they're going to have to make certain concessions if what they want is an actual relationship due to the decisions that they've made. And, it just is what it is. But initial thoughts on that, to be sure. I don't have an issue with what he said. I think what he said made sense. And I don't think that because guys go through the mental process of evaluating these things, that it means that they're frightened or somehow not strong enough to handle a woman who is used. I think it's a reasonable, measured response that any man is going to undergo, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been hearing this air quote double standard of women being called hoes and guys being praised since middle school, latter years of elementary school. Like girls was like, why is it cool for him to be, have all these girls or whatever, and girls get called, hoes and blah 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 blah. Like I've been hearing this for a long time, and those women grew up, and those women are Brittany Renners and the Amber Roses right now, all over social media, trying to make it cool and trying to get some type of reclaim. All right. But what they're doing is behaving in their masculine energies is what they're doing. And they can be as coy and as dainty as they want to be. If they're sexually promiscuous, then they're acting masculine. You can't slice that any other way. Yeah, you can't slice that any other way. And so for Brittany Renner and her attempts of rebranding herself as a woman who's a reform shown, right? A reform thought. And she's really trying to be like, hey, I don't live that life no more. I'm ready to be a wife, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So she's trying, it's on deaf ears over here. But she's going from podcast to podcast, creating video after video, pleading her case to anybody that she wants, that that she would ultimately want to fund a lifestyle for the rest of her life. That's what she's looking for, because she's not going to settle for an average guy. Average guys want her all day, but she's not going to settle for an average guy. All right. So she wants somebody at a very high level. So that's why she goes on all of these videos, knowing she's going to go viral with the same talking points nowadays of I've changed. But if you've changed, Miss Renner, then you would see the fault in your own actions of thoughting it out for so many years. You wouldn't have to ask Mr. Andrew Tate, what's the why of me having a high body count is a bad thing, but a guy's having a good one. That mere thought process shows that you're not ready to be a wife. So she can try to play these mind games if she wants. I don't know who's buying them, but she's casting this out. And it's a very broad net, and there's a lot of simps out there, and there's simps out there with some cash. So, and she knows that. So she's trying to catch somebody with all of this rhetoric, but somebody with a keen eye and keen set of ears will also hear that she's not even close to whatever she's claiming that she is. So she's double talking. If there's a woman who really stepped in her feminine energy and was ready to be married, she would see the fault in her previous actions and repent, and then tell the world that, you know what, I was wrong for, having all those bodies like that. And as a matter of fact, all these guys out here that says you should have a lower body count, they're actually right. But she won't do that because she's lacking accountability in that department. So she can claim she's being accountable by saying that I don't want to live like that anymore. But for her to have this cognitive dissonance, that record is out there. And not only that, you wrote books. You had all kinds of videos and all kinds of monologues of you just bragging about such a lifestyle. So there's a history out there on her. You know, the average girl in the street, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to do some investigative research, find out what kind of bodies that she's got on her list. But Miss Renner, the world knows. So good luck trying to cover that up. But I agree with you wholeheartedly here. I agree with Mr. Tate here. And Miss Renner, try again. All right.
For real.
Try again, Miss Renner. She's going. She's doing this thing. But to me, this is the latest ploy, the latest campaign. All right. The latest finesse, if you will. She dug herself such a large ditch. She has to go on this camp. She has to go on this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, this is Brittany Renner for wife, 2024. This is her waving her thing. Hey, somebody marry me. She's campaigning for this. And for me, I'm not buying it. If there's some guy out there that's going to simp, because they're going to do it, feel like they got some arm candy or something like that, somebody going to simp off on that. I don't have that much faith in humanity. But I'm just telling you right now, it ain't working over here, Miss Renner. Try again.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I was gonna bring that up. I feel like, and I wonder whether anyone suggested this to her. Like, you've yet to receive your comeuppance truly. If she really was serious and she was really going to hold herself accountable, instead of going on podcasts and trying to point out societal double standards in such a way to excuse her decisions, to make them seem more redeemable, she would get off social media. She'd stop getting on podcasts. She would find a career where she can exercise a talent that she has and contribute to society, where she could probably still earn a lucrative income. And she would do speed dating, eHarmony, whatever you got to do, paint and sips, wind downs. She would go to singles night at certain places. She would do things in such a way that a woman who is actually serious about being in a relationship, who has baggage, would also do. But she's not doing that. She's still very much in the limelight, trying to spew her rhetoric. That to me doesn't necessarily, you're not necessarily oozing accountability. You're just oozing, I'm trying to make excuses for my previous behavior so that you can understand the qualities that I still possess despite my behavior. Yep. Like, it rings on deaf ears. And I think she's realized, I wonder whether in hindsight she regrets a lot of the stuff that she did. I wonder when she's by herself, and she's in her thoughts, if she's like, I shouldn't have done any of that. I wonder, and she'll never admit this publicly. In all likelihood, she won't. But I wonder if that goes through her mind, because she's reaping what she sows, and she's a hit dog right now. And what she's trying to do is contribute to this ongoing liberal rhetoric that they are trying to create in our current culture, which stipulates that masculinity and femininity, that there's no difference, that there's no line between the two, that they are somehow equitable. And therefore, because I did all these things, I should be viewed upon the same way that a man would be viewed upon if he did them. And as Tate said, the world is inherently unfair. These things are not the same. They are inherently inequitable. And so you're going to have to understand the role that you played in these decisions and operate accordingly. And so I kind of feel like, what would endear her more, hell, she would even endear herself more to men who are looking for wives if she said, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done any of that. If I could take it all back, I would, but I can't. I'm in this situation now, and I just want to move forward with my life in as best a way as possible. Instead of trying to say, I did what I did, here's why, and you should accept me or else, which is what she's doing. She's just really dug in, and you can't smoke her out of her own hole. And, I guess she'll die on that hill. But this is why I brought up the fact that she's going to have to make certain concessions. Because, women in Brittany Renner's position, they want to be married, or they want to get into a good relationship, or they want to be with a man who is in all likelihood preferably of high value. Despite the fact that you have this history, you're going to have to make certain concessions. And so in the last video, I said, she's going to have to consider being a part of certain things, like maybe a polyamorous relationship or being a kept woman. You're going to have to be a part of a setup where a man is married to a wife who's dutiful, and you're just you're the mistress that the wife knows about and that she allows the man to have around. You'll never have all of that, man, because most of him is going to belong to the wife. But we see certain types of setups like this. We know this stuff goes on in the real world and in society. I think she's going to have to give up on this dream of being in this committed monogamous situation with this high value guy, because most high value guys are going to evaluate your usage rate, and they're going to say, what's to stop me from getting with a woman who has a lesser usage rate?
Right.
And there's nothing stopping that guy from doing that. So if you want to hold on to this dream of being this wife or this this committed girlfriend, you're going to have to make certain concessions. And I think getting with a guy who is a part of a polyamorous setup, getting with a guy who is a kept woman, getting with a guy and you can be the kept woman who the wife knows about, but you're the mistress, or being a lifelong side piece in that regard, those are some of the things that you're going to have to consider. And if you can't take doing any of that, then you're going to have to look at quote unquote average men. And I don't like to use the word average, because average in this particular context tends to have a negative connotation. And most modern women, if you mention an average man, they're going to think negatively. So I don't even like using the word average. I understand, but you know what I'm saying? That's what they're going to do. So I don't even like to use words like average, because they denote something negative. But I will say you're going to have to consider the guy who makes a salary, who has to get paid time off, who works, 8 to 5:30, and who owns, maybe, between 75 and 100K a year. You're going to have to consider those guys. So to women like Brittany Renner, those guys are average, you know what I'm saying? So you're going to have to consider those types of men if you can't make concessions to be with the kind of men at the top the way that you desire. And if you can't do either of those things, then I guess you're just SOL, because if you're unwilling to go back to the drawing board, get out of the limelight, stop doing podcasts, get off social media, stop preaching your gospel, and just go back to the basics, and you don't want to be a kept woman, and you don't want to be with a guy who's quote unquote average, then I have no other suggestions for you. But I think Tate hit it right on the head. And I think if she is as intelligent as she proclaims herself to be, she'll listen to some of that.
Yeah. And I'll say this, when dealing with these, modern women and their philosophies of what happiness is, all right, it's complete fantasy, and it derives from a lot of components, but I would argue the main driver, and I say this damn near all the time, but it's these housewife shows where they're just living a lifestyle. Well, what lifestyle? A housewife's lifestyle, and the mimosas, the hair, the traveling.
It's the traveling.
All of this stuff. And you can't do that with an average guy, right? If he only makes 50, 60K a year, where can we travel internationally? Can I go to Fiji off your 50K? So they want some guy that can fund this level of operation, not for 1 year, for a lifetime. And so they want to live this life of just fantasy. So not only do they create Frankenstein men, they have a fairy tale lifestyle that they want to live with Frankenstein man.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they have all of this stuff going on, because they claim they want to get married so they can be happy. And I don't know if these women have seen marriage. There's nothing happy about it. It's all work. You constantly have to work with your partner, communicate with your partner, have differences with your partner, because that's natural when two different people get together. There will be differences. There will be butting of the heads. It doesn't have to be arguments. All right. It doesn't have to be crazy or abusive, but it's not fun. And it's nothing happy about that. It's boring. A real good marriage is boring. There's nothing going on. A safe lifestyle is boring. People who live the longest are boring people. They don't do much. But all of this excitement, all this wanting to go out and do all these things and travel and this and that, and they want to live a life of excitement within a marriage. Let them get married to a guy that's above average. But they're not gallivanting. They're not over here, they're not over there. She's not with her girlfriend sipping mimosa somewhere. I need you to fund this. There's a guy better than this. So she's going to create a wild situation to where she ended up divorcing, because women divorce higher rates than men. She's going to call it up. She's going to call it off because she's not living the housewives lifestyle. And so for a Brittany Renner, no, she can't slow down. This is the problem with her having too many penises. She done had sex. She done had relations with dudes that made more money than PJ Washington. And she's shooting for that because she wants to live a lifestyle of housewife, just so she can flex on other people and say, because one of the greatest accomplishments for a thought is saying that they got married. That's like the highest thing. That's like, yep, I did all of that and I still got away with it. That's another flex for her. And this is why I say her pathology led her to us knowing her name in the first place. Her pathology is what's trying to con people into believing that she's suitable to be a wife right now. So again, have at it, Miss Renner. All right. You're not pulling one by me. All right. Or the conscious approach. All right. So but yeah, man, wild stuff. And fellas, if they want Frankenstein out of you, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, leave her where you found her. Leave her where you found her. Take it for a spin. All right. But I warned you. All right. Do not go down that road, though. I'm warning you.
Yeah, she's gonna have to make some serious concessions, and I just think at this point she is unwilling to make those concessions.
She won't.
She thinks that she can still muscle her way into whatever it is that she's looking for, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to work without her making those concessions. So, nevertheless, content for this channel for sure, because I thought what Tate said was reasonable and measured. Those are my two buzzwords for this particular topic. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. But again, good luck to you, Miss Renner. Have at it. I don't know how successful you're going to be. It's crazy.
She's going to trick somebody.
Yeah, it'll be one of those guys like in the first video we talked about.
Yeah,
it'll be something like that. Okay, so